And welcome to this session. I've lost track. It's about the fifth, I think, in this series. The series was originally designed as 12 or 13. This week, I had a big think about the subject matter, the presentation, and I doubt that in the coming years I'm going to be doing this course again. So my own thought is that I want to do a good job of it, and I don't want to rush it. Each one of these verses could be almost a whole course in itself. It's a bit like a masterclass. It assumes that people have already quite a good background basis in Dharma. So it's very tempting with each verse just to make sure that all that background is at least rehearsed a little bit. So I can't do that. But if I try and stick to doing 2 verses each Saturday, I'm going to end up so frustrated that I'll just be a bag of nerves, you know. So I don't know how much longer the course needs to be extended, but it will be extended. And I want to take my time and just give the essentials. So anyway, I think we're about number 5. So as always, whenever we practice Dharma, whenever we study Dharma, then we are making karma. And it should be good karma. Of course, if you're studying Dharma jealously and competitively, or if you're studying Dharma for all sorts of not good reasons, you'll be studying Dharma, but making negative karma. So we want to make good karma. And to do that, then we make a big mind, which means an inclusive mind, and we make a loving mind and a happy mind. We include everyone, but as I say every time, because it's very important, everyone, or all sentient beings, is just an idea. You never met them. You don't know them. You've not smelt them, touched them, experienced them. It's just an idea. All sentient beings, vast as space. It's important. They're there somewhere. They are vast as space. And as we grow in the Bodhisattva path, break free of incarnation, then our mind will reach out to hundreds, thousands, millions of beings. But just now, starting where we are, working with what we have, what is most important are the beings we've met, that we know about, and they are so precious because they teach us about life more than any books, more than any words. Just being aware, observing sentient beings. Just excuse me a second. Okay, good. I saw a message come in. I thought somebody might be stuck. Couldn't get into the session. So anyway, it's very, very important that we include our own parents, siblings, children, those who've been very present in our life, whether it's for the good or for the bad, it doesn't matter. They're part of us. They're part of our mind that we need to liberate. And they're the only living, free samples of sentient beings we've got. God bless your dog. Through your dog, you understand the canine world, and your Bajrigar, you understand the Bajrigar world, and so on. Once in Samiling, one of my students left, and then I got a note saying, I've left you a little present in Lockerbie. Please pick it up from the shop. I went into the shop. It was a pair of lovebirds in a cage. The noisiest, most destructive little creatures. I mean, lovebirds sounds good. But so for the next couple of years, I had an initiation into the world of lovebirds, and how they can strip your electric cables in about 5 minutes, and so on. Little perishers, anyway, but grateful to them, because that was an initiation. So anyway, we include. And the way we include is with the utmost love you can possibly manage. Now, in this moment of motivation, we try and find our very best love that we ever had for anybody. And we try and feel that as best we can for everybody. Best love we had for anybody, we try and feel that for everybody. And then a happy mind, because we have Dharma. Thank you.
Sonje chodon soji chonamla janchu badun tane chapsunje. Dagi jinso jipe sanamje drola penchara sanje drop parasho. Semchen tamche dewa dang dewe judang den parajuche. Dukngal ji judang tralware juche. Dukngal me pe dewa tamba dang men tralware juche. Yeren chadan ne tang tralwe tan yom chempola ne parajure chi. Loji chanchen talon arodang mapa mela chochi kampupa. Tu sumshe cha kunchen kamapa cheshi chongje chupa zenamtang. Tritas hasum palen rupaso sablam chaja chelan yanipe. Yamme drogun dapo kajula sowan depso kajula manam chupa zenonam tara chinjelo. Shenlo gomji kampara sumpa shen zeno kunla choshen milpadang. Sede data chopi gomchen la nyeko shenpa me parajinjelu. Magu gomji govra sumpa shen nunga tego jipe lama la chundu sowan depe gomchen la. Chomen magu jewara jinjelo. Yengme gomji mashira sumpa shen. Gansha tope ngowo samade macho dekara chope gomchen la gomcha lodan shalwara jinjelu. Namto ngowo chukra sumpa shen chia mayin chiyang chawala. Manga ropa chawe gomchen la kode yerme topare jinjelo. Deyata shame shamawati shameta shatru. Om kuri marajite karuta keore tejowati ola yane beshuda. Nimale malapa naye kukure kaka grase grasana muki paramuki. Muki shamedawane sawa graha bandanane negre hitva. Sawa bhava pravadina vimukta marapasha savidva. Buddha mudra nugatita savam hare butsarita parishuddhi begashantu savamara kama. Palden sawe lama rinpoche tagie chewara pende denshula. Kadren chempo gone jesonte kuson tojin drop sandu sol. Thank you. So we're making our way through the verses of the third Java Karmapa's Mahamudra prayer. And the verses so far have been quite general. And what you find more generally when we study, what you'll find in this prayer, is that having got as far as we've got, and maybe with today's teaching, we cover some very general points, but then we plunge into the details of practice. So in the verses I've gone through so far, some points haven't been expanded very much. For instance, we had
the verse which said the waters running into the four kayas, the rivers, with their waters free from the pollution of triplicity. Triplicity is very important. I explained it a bit, but I didn't explain it very, very much. But what you'll find is, as we go through the actual verses that we're coming to about the practice of Mahamudra, then we get more understanding of duality and triplicity. It's the same thing. It's the same thing, two different approaches to the same thing. And that will be the same with quite a few of the topics that have been mentioned so far. So what one needs to do, and what we need to do, and I just have to check. Yes, I had to restart my computer this morning, so I need to disappear for a second and put a document on screen so I can share it with you. Okay. Good. Good. So I want to show you what you have in your support document, which is the structure. And so that should be here. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see it? Just give me a wave. Can you see a document? Yep, good. Okay, so we started last time. The aspiration, number 3 in blue, the aspiration for the path that is not mistaken, verse 6. We started it, we didn't finish it. I need to finish that this morning and maybe go on to verse 7. So you can see we had 5 main sections. Number 2, wishing for the wisdom in the future. Number 3, praying for the path that's not mistaken. That's what we started. And then number 4 will be the beginning, will be the aspiration for putting the path into practice, how we practice. And as you can see, that has nearly all the verses that we've got to do yet in the prayer. It breaks down into sections and subsections. Now, I know many of you go kind of hazy-eyed once we get into, this one has 3 sections and the first one of those has 4 subsections. It's like too much. But what we do need to appreciate is that so far we've been dealing with very general points. Now, as we go into the details in all of the next verses, many of those general points will be expanded, and you do need to be aware that now we are going into the real, you say, I mustn't say the meat of the subject, because it doesn't sound very good if you're vegan or vegetarian, but now we're really getting into it, about what really and truly is Mahamudra. So in the verse that we started last time, you can see on the master plan here, kindly given to us by the 8th Tai Situpa. As far as I know, the 3rd Karmapa who wrote this didn't give us his own structure plan for this prayer, but the 8th Tai Situpa, who could see crystal clearly what was going on in the Karmapa's mind, very kindly gave us this structure. So we see our 4-line verse, verse 6, was first about the basis. We saw the poles of existence and non-existence. B, about the path and how to avoid, as we are practicing the path, these extremes of embellishment and discredit. And then the result, Buddhahood, how at this stage we need to understand that Buddhahood is free from two extreme limits: conditioned existence, worldliness, and just total serenity. And then the last line's the actual expression of that as a prayer. So please, as we go through these weeks, please do check the master plan, and it will help. So I think, let's see. What I'll do, just in case some of you are only joining us today, I am giving the transmission for these verses as we go along. So I want to give you the transmission for this verse that we started last time. Zhangxi tsemni saltong zunjukla, choche chagcheng dojin aljoche. Oh no, sorry, that's the next verse. Tache tatral denni shi dan, lobore tatral, jokure tatral, somni lamchugi, sishi tatral denni tretope, golchu mepe, jodang treparasho. And then for the next verse, Zhangxi semni saltong zunjukla, zhongche chagchen doji najoche. Zhangsha lowere trupi drimanam, Zhangdre ritral chuku manjursho. So then the English for that. Sorry, but I have to do this. There'll be a bit of juicy explanation coming soon, but this is the technicalities. So last week, free from the extremes of eternalism and nihilism, the point of the basis is the two truths, through which the supreme path of the two accumulations, free from the excesses of asserting and denying, gives the result, the good of oneself and others, free from the extremes of existence and quiescence. May I meet this unerring teaching of no mistake. So there's a lot there. The first one about the basis, I mentioned last week about the Buddha nature, and I gave the examples of the precious metal in the ore, whether it's gold in gold ore or silver in silver ore, it's there. Once you get it out, it's the same, it's not changed. But until you do get it out, then it won't have much value. I think I've told in other courses in 1970 when I was in Afghanistan, I bought, I don't know if I was swindled or not, but I bought a 1 kilo rock, and the person who sold it guaranteed that inside it was an emerald. It's emerald ore. And that, so people bought 1 kilo rocks of emerald ore, and according to what the other people, the other travelers, Westerners said, and according to what the seller said, sometimes you could get up to a 1 carat emerald in there. Goodness knows how, but anyway, I bought one. But if it had a 1 carat emerald inside, it wouldn't be any use until all the rock was chipped away and the whole thing was properly refined. So last week we had that, and the butter's in the milk already. We just need to churn it to get it out. You can't spread milk on bread like butter. And then the oil is in the sesame and so on. So last week I wanted to stress the importance for you, for all of us, to learn the Buddha nature teachings. They're not simple, and it takes a lot of teachings to get an appreciation of something that your intellect will never get. Not just today, not just in this lifetime, even if in this lifetime you become the world's greatest Buddhist Buddhist scholar, if you eat spoonfuls of ginkgo biloba and your intelligence sparkles, nobody, not even our greatest lamas, thinking mind, will ever get Buddha nature. Right? So do we give up now? I was with one Lama who was teaching it. We were starting a month's course. And he said, he read one of the very first verses from Maitreya, which says, words can never express it. The intellect can never get it. So he said, well, Maitreya said that. What's the point? What are we doing here? We might as well give up now. But all the following 400 and something verses about Buddha nature are to give us the best idea we can get of something which can never be encompassed by ideas, not even a bit of it. But we need to know about it so that our path is informed, and in particular, so that we avoid the mistakes that the third Karmapa is telling us here. The first mistakes about the basis are usually translated as eternalism and nihilism. It's a translation, impossible to translate. So we do need to know, we need to have some idea of what Buddha nature means. That was last week. So this week we'll carry on to more practical teachings, and this is it's quite interesting. For this text, we have the VIIIth Tai Situpa's commentary. Wonderful commentary, beautiful, jewel of scholarly work. So what the VIIIth Tai Situpa says about this first line of this verse 6 is very much to do with philosophy. What the present 12th Tai Situpa says about this first line of verse 6 is very much to do with us Westerners and to give us a hands-on insight. So I wanted to tell you today something you do need to know about Mahamudra, which is that there are two approaches. One is the scholarly approach. The other is the meditator's approach. If we have the time, ideally, we'll do both. We'll understand the ideas, we'll understand a lot about philosophy and many things. And at the same time, our meditation practice will be showing us the value of the Mahamudra we're practicing. And in the end, it will show us and make us grateful that we didn't get too caught up in philosophy, because as Tilopa said to Niropa, and he makes a list, followers of the paramitas, and these scholars and those scholars will never get this. Because the intellect cannot grasp it. It needs to be a direct experience, realization, which transcends the intellect. If the intellect were clouds, and just now we're under the clouds, we'd be saying, is it the white one? Is it the black one? Is it the one with the shiny edge? And our teacher will be saying, no. But it's up there, isn't it? Yes. And I need to go in an aeroplane, right? Yeah. And I need to work hard to buy the ticket, right? Yeah. And it's up there, but up there it's white or it's black. Yeah, but that's not where you're going. So you buy the ticket and you go up in the aeroplane and you go through the clouds, boom, 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 fasten your seatbelt, turbulence, but then you get to the other side. And there's endless space. And the clouds are still there, but you have a different view. Our intellect will never get it. We need to know that. So anyway, we have the scholar's approach and we have the hands-on approach. The 8th Tai Situpa tells us what is meant by this first line about being, each one, it says, it is this. The basis is the two truths, free from eternalism, nihilism. So then the 8th Tai Situpa goes through the philosophies present in India at the time of Buddha, and then afterwards at the time of the great Buddhist scholars, and how they mistake the ultimate truth by either making it too solid, too real. They make it into a god, they make it into a something like Purusha and things like this. So eternalism or reification, whichever translated words you like, either make it too real, or they deny what is there. There's a denial, or there's a simple ignorance of what is actually there. So the 8th Tai Situpa goes through the non-Buddhist schools, and then he says, even amongst the Buddhists, there are these Buddhists who mistake the ultimate two truths, and they either make it too much, too solid, or they don't allow enough truth in. So then the present Tai Situpa tells us what we need to know, because he's so wise and he's brilliant and he's seen a lot of Westerners. So he tells us about this basis, the basic nature of mind, the Buddha nature. Like I tried to start last week, he tells how all sentient beings, every sentient being, if it's sentient, it has this nature, even the tiniest bug, and every sentient being has the Buddha potential, every one of them. And that's what I said last week, is what gives us, is what he explains, this longing. Something's unhappy inside us until we are heading towards our true nature, our Buddha nature. And he says we can get detoured into samsara. He said it can be like a chalk circle, it can be a tiny circle, or it can be kilometers circle, but a circle always comes back to the same place. This means that your samsara, you each know your own samsara and its stories and what you get caught up in. And especially when you practice Dharma, you start to see your samsaric aches that don't want to let go, that are pulling you back. So they're the circles we get involved with. We go back to the same place. We go back to the same, sometimes Dharma failure that we knew in past lives. The same old tendencies come up again and again. And because we don't really know the details of past lives, sometimes they seem new. Anyway, Tai Situpa says the basis is the two truths. Now, this is what we need to know. The basis, okay, it's Buddha nature. Right? It's the Buddha that's underlying all of this. It's the gold in the ore. It's the endless space behind the clouds and so on. What we're working with is the two truths. Not the one truth of the ultimate. We're not getting rid of the relative so that we can break through to the ultimate. When we break through the ground, the gold, the sesame oil that we want is the two truths. Ultimate and relative, inseparable. Inseparable. Nobody could ever get a crowbar, a mental crowbar, and just be in ultimate truth. Not possible. So that ground that we're aiming for, and in the Tibetan, that we translate as ultimate truth and relative truth, they're both truth. But one is the truth about the ultimate nature of our mind, shunyata, and the other is the truth about the relative, and it says totally fake or totally subjective, we might say these days, relative truth of our mind, but they're both the truth. So when you become Buddha, you are not gone into an ultimate truth, which is totally beyond relative. Now, words can't express that. I wish they could, but they can't. Because we have to understand, when you become Buddha, okay, it's called gone beyond, totally gone, right? You've gone beyond the suffering. But the relative truth of endless beings is still there. And your mind is all-knowing. So we need to know this. If you're doing your prayers, praying your socks off, may I become Buddha. May I become Buddha. Make sure you know what you're praying for and that you understand it. Because do you want a mind that's aware of every single sentient being's suffering? Honestly, if I say we could plug you in now, and you will be plugged into the suffering of limitless beings, including those in the worst psychoses and so on. Would you want it? Is that what Buddhahood is? So what Buddhahood is in that respect, what compassion is, because beings are suffering, Buddhas have the ultimate compassion. So Buddhas have the ultimate compassion. So what does it mean? And words can't express this. We need to take the aeroplane and go up beyond the clouds and experience Buddha mind, which is what Mahamudra practice is for. Not become Buddha. Tai Situpa often makes the distinction. We can experience Buddha mind a long time before we become Buddha. And you remember earlier in this course, Trungpa Kunlek, when he was at the Jowo statue, he was there thinking, he said, we were the same at one point, but I was lazy. You got there. I'm still here. I bow down to you, Buddha. So we can experience Buddha mind in this life. We can taste it. It's like you can go up in an aeroplane and taste the space, but you've not yet become total space, but you have the experience, authentic. So that's what we are aiming for. It's what we're aiming for. So, and that is the two truths, whereby we understand what I'll explain further in the verses that come a bit later on in this prayer. There's no point that I try and sum it up now. It's better to sum up the real philosophy, not the intellectual philosophy, the real philosophy of when we're experiencing what's the truth we're looking for and what's the traps we're trying to avoid. So in this verse, we have it briefly, which is eternalism and nihilism. Eternalism is when we make it. Now here, let's forget about all the philosophical arguments in India and in Tibet and so on. Let's go straight to the heart of the matter, Mahamudra. The truth of everything, the two truths of everything, relative and ultimate. True nature of our mind. we want to be free from two extremes. One of them is making it into a something, the nature of mind. Well, my dear children, Dharma children, enough of this talk. Let's just sit and rest in the nature of mind. And then if you have some idea of what the nature of mind is, you might sort of meditate and go somewhere to a state. You might try and re-find a state that you experienced once in your deepest meditation. You might try and recreate when you sat in front of Karmapa or Tai Situpa or your teacher and you had profound experience. Your memory will try to sort of, just a moment, I'll get back there. That can be very helpful and inspiring. But once we've made the nature of mind something, then all the other things that aren't that something don't have the nature of mind. That's ridiculous. Everything you'll ever experience, everything you ever experienced in this life, up until now, what you're experiencing in this second, and everything you'll experience up to enlightenment happens in your mind. This true nature of the mind cannot be a compartmentalized something that we can go to in meditation. So now, and I do hope this is making some sense, and we will come back to it in future verses, but I need to say something about void and voidness. In Sanskrit, shunya and shunyata. In English, void, voidness. In Tibetan, tongpa, tongpa ni. So it's quite good. In each language, there is a last syllable that changes everything. And in Jamgon Kongtrul's commentary to the Buddha nature text, I think it's some 17 pages at the beginning, are discussing the enormous importance of understanding the difference between shunya and shunyata, between a noun and an adverb, I think. Neil, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But when you've got ness, it can't exist all by itself. Like you can't have stickiness all by itself. Something has to be sticky. Then we can talk about its stickiness. If you've got redness of something, redness, you can't have redness all by itself. There has to be something which is red. There has to be something which is red, which is sticky. If you have loneliness, you can't have loneliness floating in space. You need a lonely person. It would be terrible if there was loneliness floating in space and could just descend on us like a cloud. Ness. Please take time to think about ness words. So, shunya means empty. If it was just shunya, there would be an empty space. So what Tai Situpa warns us about is not to have some idea that there is ultimate reality, not the two truths, ultimate and relative, both true, but an ultimate reality, which would be shunya, a void that you could go into. Now, this takes us way, way into philosophy. This is why the VIIIth Tai Situpa's commentary is so amazing, interesting, because even some Tibetan teachers, and I won't say who, but very, very, very famous ones, not of our school, say the ultimate reality is like fainting. because there's nothing left. You've gone into boing, the void. All relative reality has subsided, and there is nothing but the peaceful void, which when you come out of it, or when you interface it with relative reality, could know anything very compassionately. But in itself, there is the ultimate reality, which is the void. So in our Kagyu tradition, we definitely do not think that. And there is no kind of, I can sit in voidness where you're kind of nothing happening, nothing at all happening. On the way to becoming Buddha, of course, many meditation experiences in which non-thought experiences, incredibly spacious experiences, are part of our learning and part of our shaking free from the busy mind and the samsaric mind. But where we're going, the basis, the gold that we are refining, is the perfect presence of the two truths. So one extreme that we're free from is eternalism, where we make the ultimate truth something. Now, other religions take it a step further. They make it someone sometimes, God or Brahma, a creator being, or they make it what people these days will call the universe, where there is kind of a fabric which has all sorts of potentials, purusha, and it can manifest this, it can manifest that. So we need to understand, if we're in the philosophy Mahamudra, we need to understand all of those ways of misrepresenting to ourselves ultimate reality, because that's what we're striving for. If we're a meditator Mahamudra person, we need to observe the mind as we sit and practice, and how it will have a tendency to think of Buddha mind, ultimate bodhicitta, whatever we call it, as a something, as a state. When we go deeper, as we will do in later verses, we can see the whole problem is the thinking mind. It's the intellect, which is a desperate little fella. The intellect needs to have a label, because then it's comfortable. Then it can say, oh, ultimate reality, yes, read all the Buddha nature teachings and this, and had an experience and so on. We want to know what it is. On your Mahamudra journey with your guru, that intellectual safety will gradually be dismantled and become replaced by a very, very deep and profound form of faith. We shift our certainty from my ideas to the infinite blessing of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and our gurus, and we trust it. It's our quick way out. So there's the extreme of eternalism, where we make it, ultimate reality, something. The next one's more interesting. The other extreme is that we deny. We are nihilists. We don't give enough weight to ultimate reality, because it is the two truths. And the truth of relative reality is the power of karma, cause and effect. You, me, our lives, what you're experiencing today, who you are, where you live, what your health is, what your wealth is, what your heart's aspirations and so on is. You are unique, as is everybody else, and you are changing, you are impermanent, you have suffering in your life. So impermanence and suffering and interdependence and no lasting self. So if we just have some idea of shunyata, that everything is like a dream and so on, but we don't weigh the dream, we don't give it enough weight, then we're in deep trouble. So Tai Situpa points us in his teachings on this prayer, present Tai Situpa, to the sort of mind that thinks that shunyata, Buddha's voidness, or Dharmakaya, whatever name we give it, Dhammadhatu, is a kind of empty void space and nothing else really matters. Now that's the trap. It's void, so it doesn't matter. Or it's all void anyway. Or you don't exist anyway. Or I don't exist anyway. I think I'm a clever Buddhist because I read about it doesn't exist. Oh, I don't exist. And none of it exists. It's just all an illusion. It's the utmost stupidity. It's not Buddhist at all. It's a mistake, mistaking Buddhist ideas. So everything matters. It's why in Dzogchen, Guru Rinpoche says, it's so profound. Your view is as broad as space, but your action is as fine as flower, because you know how important relative reality is. So we need to give enough and proper weight to relative reality. But then, Tai Situpa points out, of course you do. The karma you make is so vital. And he said, I meet lots of people who come to me for advice. Up there, they're functioning fine. They understand the words of the Shunyata teachings. So all these great teachers, Nagarjuna and Longchenpa and all of those, they've got some intellectual understanding. And they see how people's delusions of reality, of all sorts of things like time and space and cause and effect, can be taken apart. He said, but they come to me and they've been practicing for years and understanding for years, and they know they're stuck. And he said it's because they have not evaluated properly the two truths and the absolute importance of understanding karma, cause and effect. When our best teachers say, if there's one thing that is the heart of the Buddha's teaching, it's this. It's not shunyata, it's karma, cause and effect. And actually they say, if you understand karma, cause and effect, you have to understand shunyata. Because as you look at yourself, your own mind, you look at life around you, what is there that's fixed? What is there that stays? What is there that exists in its own right? Doesn't depend on anything else. Nothing. The more we explore the reality of our own existence and those around us, the more we can't help but to recognize shunyata, not as a meditation experience, kind of shunyata, or not as some idea about nothing exists, where we tell ourselves a story, nothing exists, or we look at our mind and say, anyway, it's only an illusion, it's relative reality. We need to feel the power. Feel the power of karma, cause and effect. So we must, and then developing this, trying to find a balance where we don't deny the power of karma, cause and effect. We don't deny it, but then we don't make relative reality too much either. And the way he explains it is like this. He said, if there was just a mechanical, materialistic karma, cause and effect, we're done for from the beginning. He said, every day to eat 1 grain of rice. He said, you think of that grain of rice, what it took to make it. The ground had to be worked. insects were killed, and then so on, just for one grain of rice. And he said, for one day's living, the cost to life around us is enormous. Beings lose their life to keep us fed. Many, many of them. If any of you have worked in the garden, if you're vegetarian, if you're vegan, everything involves the loss of life. Vegans, the less, of course. But it involves the loss of life. So he said, if there was just karma, how could we even in one day make enough good karma to make up for that? So we need to practice good karma very, very effectively, but we need to know the nature of mind, ultimate reality, to understand how karma, and in particular, the karma we make through Vajrayana practice, the visualizing, mantras and so on, how could it be that that can destroy lifetimes of karma, bad karma? How could that be? So we need to understand the nature of mind at the same time as understanding the power of relative reality. We don't need to make things too solid, either ultimate reality into something or relative reality. We don't need to underestimate either, so to be nihilistic. There's a lot more to be said about those, and that's why people study philosophy for 6, 9, 12 years in the Buddhist Shedras, not in half an hour of Ken's talks. So once we've understood the basis, what are we working on? What do we want to become? What are we bringing out? What's in us already as our Buddha mind? The truth of the two truths, free from those extremes. Then we need the path. And it says, so then the path is very much related to the basis. As we practice meditation, which means becoming familiar with our own minds and taking control of our mind through skillful technique, not letting it go in those places it used to traditionally. We can bring it back before it gets too lost, keeping it in places that are useful, places of prayer, of visualization, places of direct shunyata experience, and so on. The actual practice is drawing us closer to this basis. So in our practice, we need to see our mind becoming extreme. We need to see our mind solidifying either the things of our life, so that people and what they do, and our life circumstances and our health and sickness become too solid. We need to not make things too real. But at the same time, we don't need to be in a state of denial, which is nihilism is very much like denial, where there's some areas of our life and experience which are no-go zones for various reasons. So our practice is learning how to discover our mind. And of course, our mind, that word, our mind, which we come to in, I think, verse after next. Our mind is not just current activities, it's everything which is stored in there from your past karma in your stream of consciousness. And that will be more and more discovered, the lid will be taken off, it will be discovered, and then worked with. Has to be, because that is your Dharma path. There's no path out there with sweet-smelling flowers along the borders and so on. Your path is to discover your stream of consciousness and to use that as your raw material. So we apply avoiding the assertion and the denial. And the actual path itself is the two accumulations. And so that's wisdom and punya. Punya, often translated as merit, a virtue. And we need both. It's very funny. There are lots of twos in this verse. Two things to avoid, but also where we're going. Non-duality, non-triplicity is expressed as two. The two truths, the basic nature, the basis. Then the path, two accumulations. And the result, Buddhahood, free from the two things, but twofold benefit. It's very, very useful, very, very true. So the path is the accumulation of prajna, wisdom, pranja. This will take us to achieving Dharmacharya. Dharmacharya, the perfect realization of shunyata. But then the accumulation of punya, of goodness through kind deeds, all of the good relative world actions we can do, and especially prayers and visualizations, because they are very, very skillful ways of working amazingly efficiently with the accumulation of punya, if we do them properly. The accumulation of goodness, good karma, more and more good karma, a wealth of good karma, will enable us to achieve the Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya that we will manifest to help other beings. So we'll reach the two truths, ultimate and relative, as Dharmakaya and Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya, and we'll do that through developing the two accumulations. In theory, inseparably. So as you are doing the good things, good deeds, you're being generous, you're being kind, you're being forbearing, you're practicing meditation, all of the relative level things of Dharma practice, keeping vows, keeping samaya, and so on. As you're doing those, at the same time you have the wisdom of shunyata, and you know how dreamlike, how illusory they are. The point is this, and Katie and I made a bit of a song about it recently, and some of you may have seen it on Facebook. It's about the dream nature. It's like a dream, but I mean, we all know what it's like when you dream. You're there 100% in your dream until you wake up. So although we know our practice is like a dream, the results will be like a dream in this dreamlike world, that's the dream you'll be dreaming. So we can't dismiss it. We can't do denial and say, oh, it's just like a dream, because it's blooming painful if it's a horrible dream. You know, a nightmare, you're so relieved when you wake up. Bad karma results. Life's horrible. So horrible, and you're experiencing it, nobody else. And you can't shake it off. You run away, you can't. The same thing happens somewhere else. You find a new partner, the same things happen. You get a different job or career, the same finance karma happens. So it is like a dream. So we need to find what we call the middle way, where we don't deny, we don't make it too solid. But we need both accumulations. In theory, hand in hand, we have the voidness wisdom that we practice on a relative level. In actual reality, according to your guru's advice, when you practice Mahamudra, that sometimes you will need to put a lot more effort into the punya and doing good deeds. Your guru might send you to work, helping, supporting other people, where so much of your time is no longer your own, because you are given as a bodhisattva to the work you've been sent to. Sometimes the teacher might do the opposite. And even if you think, yeah, but I'm doing fantastic bodhisattva work. Look, I'm big in this charity or whatever it is. It might be the time to winkle you out of that, put you in a retreat, set you on your bottom and doing shamatha and vipassana until the reality of shunyata, the reality of your mind's power to manifest is directly experienced, as Karmapa tells us later, again and again and again and again, until there can be no more doubt. So in practice, according to our guru's instruction, not our own inclination, usually, then we might need to be putting more emphasis on punya or more emphasis on shunyata, on merit or on wisdom. But as time goes by and we mature as Buddhists, the two must come together. The way they will come together is that the meditation experience that we find on our cushion, the blessed sacred experience with all of its qualities, we carry with us into daily life, so that the border, the barrier between daily life and cushion life goes. Daily life becomes as much a teaching on shunya as meditation practice. So then this leads to the result. And the result, it says, is the good of oneself and others. Now, that's how it's translated. In Tibetan, it's Dön Ni. Ni means two, twofold, Dön. And I think I explained in this course already, excuse me, Dön has 6 meanings. So we can't find one translation in English. It means the twofold benefit, the twofold point of it all, and the twofold focus of your mind, if we use worldly terms. So this dön, the two döns, are basically your own fulfillment and fulfillment for others, whatever we can do that brings others to fulfillment. So the twofold benefit, fulfillment, dön, comes with Buddhahood. As we attain Dharmacharya, there is nothing higher, there is nothing better, there is nothing purer that we could ever do for ourselves. If we wanted to do ourselves the greatest favor in the whole cosmos, becoming Dharmacharya is it. It is free from all the suffering, it is free from all the confusion of ego and so on. When you get there, only you will know what Dharmacharya is. But then once you're there, there is benefit for others, because from that purest, best, most peaceful, most sacred of all spaces, then we can manifest Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya to guide other bodhisattvas or to guide beings in the 6 realms of suffering. So that's the twofold good. Free from the extremes of existence and quiescence. So the one extreme, existence, means samsaric existence. Being reborn, being under the power of karma. That's one extreme we want to avoid. We need to avoid. So our Dharma practice, excuse me, and where we're going isn't for a super duper samsara. That's the God realms, they're still in samsara. It's not for any paradise type experience in the end. So, but the main point in terms of for practice is, okay, you're doing Mahamudra, you're receiving the teachings, you're on your cushion, you're off your cushion, but we need to know where this mind of ours is going. It's not going to anything that can be defined, where you can put a mind image on it, where you can see yourself as a Buddha in some kind of state. In our Mahamudra practice, we need to know that real Buddhahood has no fixed existence that we can label, imagine. So even though we're beginners, when we sit down, we know we need to know we're going to a state of no references. Total fluidity, where you are as best and as peaceful and as pure as can be, and at the same time, your mind is so vast, and in this person's life, that person's life, helping them. But there's no fixed image we can give to that. It's not like you catch a train at Paddington, and I don't know where Paddington trains end up, Bristol maybe, and you've got an idea what Bristol's like, or Euston. I know Euston. You go to Euston Station, and you know the train that's going to Lockerbie. You know what Lockerbie's like and Samiling's like. You've got an idea. That's why you get on the train. There won't be a fixed reality. We need to already know that from the start. So we're not looking for a super samsara. But on the other hand, we're not looking for, or Buddha's enlightenment isn't, quiescence, which is what the Shravaka schools of Buddhism are aiming for, where all suffering is dismantled. All of your karmic tendencies, your mind streams, impurities are gone, and there is nothing left but totally uninterrupted peace. That's not what Buddhahood is. It's what the Shravakas, and these days the Theravadas, think Buddha attained. They say it's like a candle going out. All the wax of samsara, habits, tendencies, karma, has gone. So when all of that's gone, the flame's gone. That candle, which was your hundreds and thousands of existences, is finished. Then there's nothing but peace, which is non-sensorial. So once the mind has experienced samadhi by going inside and actually disappeared into that peace. You know, when Gampopa, yesterday we celebrated Gampopa's passing. Before he met Milarepa, Gampopa could go into shamatha for 2 weeks. Everything shut down. In those 2 weeks, you don't see, hear, smell, taste, touch. No thoughts, no feelings. It's like when you leave home, you turn off all the gas taps, you turn off all the light switches. Everything that makes us who we are turned off, and then nothing but peace. So in the Theravada school, in the Shravaka schools, they've experienced this, and then the best meditators have experienced that in its absolute finesse, with not even the slightest disturbance in that peace, thought disturbance or anything. So they think Buddha achieved that. That's not what we're aiming for in Mahamudra. We're aiming to uncover the two truths. The two truths, relative and ultimate. And then what that is, and why we need to study the Buddha nature teachings. When we study them, then we study 7 key areas. And then 6 and 7 are the qualities of a Buddha and the activity, the manifestation of a Buddha. If there were just total peace, you wouldn't have qualities. Well, peace is peace, nothing's happening. No qualities present. And then the activity, because of those qualities, to help and to help and to help in the very, 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 very best way. Couldn't be there. So we are avoiding. Now, when it comes to Mahamudra practice, these are the ideas, right? But where can our practice go? Sometimes we go, oh, so peaceful. You sat and you never expected it, and then for 20 minutes or an hour, you just serenity itself. It was so nice. So nice. Such a relief. And you feel like, yeah, if I could sit like Milarepa all day long, then I could just be there in that serenity. So we need to be careful of that. And in the Bodhisattva teachings, it says, be very, very careful from the seductiveness of the peacefulness and well-being of samadhi, absorption, mind absorption. So life is short. Life is very, very short. Every moment of meditation practice, because we don't get many, is very precious. So we learn to keep our mind away from the temptation of samadhi. We need to develop samadhi. It's like you need to go somewhere, but you're not going to get involved. You're going to use it as a stepping stone to wisdom. Then it's brilliant. You need it. Samadhi, shamatha, is the laboratory for deepest wisdom. But if you get drawn into it, you're lost for a long time. So in actual Mahamudra practice, this line of this verse becomes very relevant. We need to know where we're going. It's not like a super paradise, and it's not total shutdown quiescence. So we need to understand what Buddha really is. So, in fact, I spent nearly almost 2 sessions on this verse, but there's a reason for this. When Tai Situpa taught it, he said this verse, he said nearly all the Buddha Dharma, and especially Mahamudra practice, is in it. It's a very, very, very key verse before we plunge into more specific details. Then the last line, it says, may I meet this unerring teaching of no mistake. You will get this from a properly qualified Mahamudra teacher. You won't get it from Mahamudra or Dzogchen forums on Facebook or on social media. There are many, many books. There's an awful lot of fascinating stuff said and explained and talked about. And maybe it's a bit helpful. But in Mahamudra, you need a qualified teacher who will help you on your journey to not get it wrong. It says unerring. What is it's a funny word in English, err, to err, to err or err. What is it? What happens when you err? What happens? You go off track. In Gampopa's teachings about a proper teacher, a proper guru for your path, then he gives 3 analogies. One, he says they're like a guide in an unknown land. So when you go somewhere you don't know, you could get very lost, you could be in quite some danger, you need a guide who can help you. So as we go into our mind for the reality of Mahamudra, then we need someone who can be our own guide. They're walking by your side at your pace. So we need a guide. The second example is a ferryman, or ferry person, we'd say these days, when you're crossing a rapid river. So you're both in the boat together. You've got to get to the other side. But the ferry person knows the currents, the dangers of the water. And they know, for instance, that you need to head upstream in order to end up directly opposite on the bank. Ferries are interesting. But the third analogy is a bodyguard. And it says, when you go through a place, and there were lots of them in the old days of Tibet and India, it says where there are thieves and dangerous wild animals, you need somebody to protect you. So it says the thieves and the wild animals, they're our own emotions, they're our own thoughts, our hopes, our fears. And we need somebody with the strength to be by our side to help us until such point as we're strong enough to defend and protect ourselves. So when we pray in this last line, it says, may I meet this unerring teaching. I think these days you need to think of that mostly as an unerring teacher, because where else do you get the teachings? So I think that's more or less it. It was an intense session, so let me finish with a little personal story. It was the Dalai Lama's something birthday, maybe 70th, and Tai Situpa was not allowed in India at the time. So he was in Samiling. He was traveling in the West between Samiling, Southeast Asia, other places. So he was often in Samiling. And he wanted to send the Dalai Lama a birthday present. And he'd written a poem, and he calligraphed a poem. So it was big. It was a big thing. And he said, I want it framed here in Scotland because they don't frame things so well in India. So it was framed and glazed. So this huge picture frame with his calligraphy, and then to keep it safe on the journey, a big wooden crate. And then I got called up to him one day, and he said, Ken, the Dalai Lama knows you, he knows your face. And he said, I want you to take this to him. So all of a sudden I had a job, which was to take this huge crate, as well as my own baggage, to Dharamsala. So first stop was actually to take it to Sherabling. And Sherabling was in huge reconstruction at the time that shifted the earth, the huge mountains of earth. Of course, I didn't know this. I got a taxi from Delhi, and I had a young Tibetan boy who was with me. And the taxi got fed up with the road up to Sherabling, so they dumped us at the bottom of the hill and said, we're not going any further. They put the bags out. Nighttime was falling, and so then I had to go up to Sherabling. It's a long way, long walk when you're heavily loaded. And I had flu at the time. I had fever. Before COVID, it was just called flu. And so I had a fever, a temperature. And so the young Tibetan boy said, let me go and knock on the door and ask if there's a shortcut. So he knocked up some old Tibetan couple, and they said, yeah, there's a path through the forest. So I had a tiny little lamp. And so we made our way down to the river and all through the forest, and then up the forest to the other side to find a huge mountain of earth that had been moved for construction work that then was like a huge sand dune to climb across. So we got into the Sherabling. It was about 10:30 or 11. Most people were asleep. And then they announced my arrival. And so then I met I forget who, one of the main people, and told him the story, and he knew we were coming anyway. So then I put the huge packing case that I've been carrying very devotedly at his feet and then fainted. The next day, they told us, what? You came through the forest, but there are 2 man-eating leopards who roam that forest and they've already killed people. So when I was telling you about a Dharma teacher is like a guide in places where there are dangerous animals, I think of that story because fortunately the leopards were somewhere else that night. Sonam diye tamche sikpane tomne ne pedranam pamchene je ganachi palap kruk paye sipe sole drowa rasho jan chup semcho rinpoche maje panam je chuchik jepa nyampa me padam kong me kongdu palwarasho gewa diye nyoduta chaja chempo rujune drowa chikjang malopa te sala kaparasho. So thank you very much. Let me just put you all on screen. Now, what I did last session, in fact, it wasn't the last one of our sessions, it was last week with the Tonglen. The questions and answers at the end, or the discussion time, was I found very useful. But also, here on Zoom, you've got everyone's picture, and I know you've got the right to the privacy of your image. So what I did last time was just kept the audio and had blank screen for the image. So if in our sessions, unless you've got an objection, if I do find that the discussion time is a very useful addition to the session itself, I'll do that. I'll keep the audio, but we won't see everybody's images, in your room, or how you look like, or grimacing or poking your tongue out at me, or whatever it is. So over to you, if you've got any comments or any questions.
Yeah, hi Ken. Is there any difference between Mahamudra and Dzogchen in Nyingmapa, and are there equivalents in the Gelugpa and Sakyapa teachings?
Over the centuries, that's gotten complicated, right? The Kagyu and Nyingma systems are very closely related to each other in many, many ways. Many of our lamas actually belong to both, like Akon Rinpoche was a Kagyu lama and a Nyingma lama. Later on in this Mahamudra prayer, you'll see the 3rd Karmapa says very clearly that whether we call it Mahamudra or Dzogchen, it's the same thing. And even the 3rd thing, the great middle way. So that said, there's something which confuses lots of people, and actually it's because of Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche. At one point in his teaching in America, he was very much promoting Dzogchen and Maha'ati in the Dzogchen in particular. Now, in Dzogchen's own terminology, and in their own way of describing things, they have the term Mahamudra. And it doesn't mean what Mahamudra means for us in the Kagyu tradition. So Mahamudra is a stage before Maha'ati or Dzogchen. And Dzogchen's a big term, it covers all of those teachings from Guru Rinpoche's times and through the Terma afterwards. So what Trungpa explains in his books and in English language and in his talks is that this is Mahamudra, but then Mahamudra goes to the highest of the highest, which is Maha'ati. But it's not the Mahamudra that we are talking about in this prayer. The Mahamudra we're talking about in this prayer has to be the same. It has to be. It's what Buddha Maitreya describes as the true nature of mind, our Buddha nature. There's not two. In the Sanskrit, it's got terms which mean the one and only, the timeless, the changeless. There aren't two. There's not a Nimapa version and a Kaju version. It's beyond all existence. It doesn't depend on anything. There aren't several of them. It's just the one. So if our path is valid, and our Mahamudra path leads to that one and only Buddha nature of mind, and so does the Dzogchen. The methods are different, but the end result cannot be different. And then in the methods, there are many, many parallels. It's just they are different lineages and different techniques. In Dzogchen, you use like the eyes and what you look at, and there are various methods. But in the end, where we're going, what we looked at today, the basis, and then the end result, the Buddhahood, twofold benefit, has to be the same. And then the path there has to be the same. Why? Because basically we are dissolving our history. Our mind, our karma, our thoughts, our emotional reactions, everyone has to do that. It's just the methods vary. Methods vary. So to answer briefly, yes, Dzogchen and what we mean by Mahamudra, the same.
Ken.
Yes, Roz, hello.
Thank you ever so much. As you said, this is an incredibly dense, complex session, and I'm going to very definitely have to watch this on YouTube several times. But thank you for explaining it so well. I've got a question, and this is a bit of a personal question, so I don't mind if you kind of don't want to answer it or whatever. I mean, obviously, yes, I'm doing the Mahamudra transmission, and obviously, therefore, I have a qualified guru for that. But the question really is, these days, for most people, access to that qualified guru for the kind of ferry person kind of stuff, like knowing the currents, da-di-da, which we don't have access to that from the guru who's giving us the transmission and giving us the practices to do. So I do have access to a good Lama. So I guess that would be the route through for the more day-to-day questions, because I was particularly struck by your comment about the balance between the accumulation of wisdom by meditation and the accumulation of merit by generosity, etc., etc. Because I do a lot of volunteering, I don't do enough meditation, and it's like what your comment has triggered is I probably need to go and talk to somebody about that and get some suggestions about, is that balance right? So would that be the Dharma that I have access to?
It's often the case, and we're a unique situation. Look, I think nearly all of us here, except for Anila, we're lay people. We're in life. These Mahamudra teachings in the past were given in monasteries, but not to everybody in the monasteries. There will be few people who would receive the opportunity to go in, and usually in retreat, they'd receive the Mahamudra transmissions. So even then, it would be very rare for an ordinary monk or nun or yogi to get to see the Karmapa, to get to see Tai Situpa. You'd have a very brief time. You'd need them for the transmission of the empowerments, for the instructions, but then you would rely on an intermediary teacher who was very definitely approved for that purpose by the Karmapa, by the Tai Situpa, or whichever one it was. And then because they are approved and they're a good teacher, if they're not sure, then they're not going to fudge an answer or make one up. They'll be able to refer up to help you. And all sorts of things happen in people's practice. And there are many very good lamas in centers and who are, like me, I'm authorized to help people in the Mahamudra training you're doing, Ocean of Certainty. You have, until the pointing out, you've got 51 different exercises. So up to a certain number of those, somebody who is designated to, to help people on their way. But if I'm not clear, if somebody comes with something, or they say, I'm seeing green and purple striped elephants every time I think of this, then although I might think of some funny answers, I would feel a duty to get online and talk to somebody who say, is there a green and purple striped elephant sutra somewhere about, what is it? No, but that's very valid. And it's the same thing with study. When I studied with Khenpo Sultan the very first time, he said the normal way we study the text is you go through it first with me, with a teacher, and there's not much opportunity, if at all, to ask any questions. He said, because so many of your questions you'll have on day 1, day 15's teaching will answer them. So there's no point me wasting, he said, quite frankly, no point me wasting my time telling you something I'm going to have to tell you in a fortnight's time anyway. You go through it first once, getting a very direct, uncomplicated by questions and side stuff, transmission from your teacher. Then you go through it in a second step with, we'll put it again, as a tutor. And there you discuss, you think, what you're not sure about, you clear up. And then at that stage, if the tutor can't answer your question, then for you, they might go to the Khenpo. But then you go through it a third time, again with the Khenpo, and there the questions that are left are the ones that are probably interesting for everybody, and the ones that give them an opportunity. Now you've had the transmission, you've thought a lot and worked through all the words and the ideas, then they can develop and tell you very interesting things about, I'm glad you're thinking about this because, and then it gets really, really interesting. But they say until you've gone through it those 3 times, you've not really sort of studied it. And Daikon Rinpoche had a brilliant idea because he thought that was good. He wanted to make a Dharma study passport with the topics that we made a list of things people should study, and it would actually be stamped for the first time through, a second time through, third time through, and then either he or Trungpa Rinpoche would say, now this person's can teach this text, which is a 4th step. And it really put the fear of God up most of our Dharma teachers, and none of them wanted it. And they'd all been such lone cowboys, they'd already for years developed their teaching style and people liked them. And it never happened.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Especially because I was going to be the examiner. And,
and can I ask you something in the same context? I found over the years that geography and accessibility has been quite a barrier up here in Aberdeen to engaging with a good teacher. And of course, since COVID, so much has gone online. And my question, I guess, is, in the current circumstances, how do I find and engage with a good teacher where it's not solely reliant on online?
It's very hard. I don't know. I think the hardness, I don't think the hardness is new, because when we look, as we do, at the biographies of the great Kagyu forebears, we find that when they wanted the real teacher who would guide them personally, some of them had such a hell of a time finding the teacher, discovering the teacher. So it's not something that's new. it's a fact, a sorry fact in a way, that good teachers, really good teachers, are very hard to find. And if we can find them, it's worth an amazing amount of effort to go to them to get the basic instructions. A very good teacher. I think these days, many people need to find a good enough teacher who's not necessarily a very good teacher, but who's good enough, stable enough, authorized enough, wise enough to help you in most things. And what else can you do but just sort of look around, whether it means going to Samiling, whether it means going to London, whether it means traveling abroad. That I don't know, because you need to find a good teacher or a good enough teacher, but also one that you connect with. Because that needs to be someone willing to get to know you, because that's how it must work. Someone who can just blah, blah, blah and repeat the teachings. Wonderful parrots, but we need more than a parrot. We need a friend. The Tibetan is Gewishinyin, or Kalyana Mitra, and it means really one half of the word means a friend, and the other means like an elder relative. It's your Dharma uncle and best friend, or aunt and best friend. So to help you really with your practice, the person will need to be prepared to get to know you and your life and your problems and your circumstances. And I think all we can do, that's the good thing about internet, is we can travel virtually to see who's available and to see if any of them fits the bill. But it's not easy. It's not easy.
Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome.
Keep searching.
Hello, Ken. It's Yael.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah.
Good morning. Yeah, sorry I got late because I clicked on the wrong link anyway. But I have a question. It's a bit difficult to articulate, but I'm sure that you will get my meaning, because it's confusing me all the time. You have the Dharmacharya, yes, and like you explained how it is non-referential and no thoughts and no all these things. And at the same time, they manifest as a Sambhogakaya and even Nirmanakaya. And there in the Nirmanakaya, they go to great lengths to try to persuade us that they are just, ordinary people like us. And they do manifest feelings and thoughts and all these things just like us. So how come the same mind, it's not mind anymore in the Dharmakaya? How come it's like sounds like schizophrenia or something? How does it go? I can't understand it.
No. And what do we use to understand is our thinking mind. And this is the problem throughout, is the thinking mind can't get it. Not just your thinking mind or mine. No thinking mind will ever really get it. What we need to do in Mahamudra is to do the practices. We need to do them until they bear fruit. So my own teacher, for instance, Akon Rinpoche, he received the Ocean of Certainty transmission from Shechen Control. And so there he had to get the results, of these 50 exercises or so up to the pointing out. He had to achieve the results of step 1 before he got the step 2 transmission. It's not like people going now to Tai Situpa in India, where you get it, or you got it each year, no matter what. So by actually doing the practice step by step, then at one point what will happen is we experience Dharmakaya, Buddha mind. And this question is perfectly answered in the experience, but only there. Only there. The examples we can use, blah, 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 with words and so on, are a mirror. A mirror doesn't think. A mirror doesn't plan. But it reflects perfectly the person in front of it, or 200 people in front of it. So Buddha mind, because of the two accumulations of wisdom and punya, gathering those two accumulations makes connections with people. You can't be generous without being generous to somebody. Then there's a Dharma connection. And when those people end up the ones that your Nimanakaya or Sambhogakaya is helping, there is a connection. There's the power of past prayers on the path. There is the fact they have Buddha nature, Dharmakaya. You have Dharmakaya. Their Dharmakaya is asleep. Yours is awake. So all of that means that the words they need to hear, the things they need to see, whether it's to say, whatever current tulkus say, to play down their realizations or whatever, that will be what is needed for you or needed at the time. And we just have to trust it until we get deeper experience, until we realize what's going on. And it's why I so often tell the story. I told it already in this course with the 16th Karmapa, about how one of the people I ushered into an interview heard him speaking all the time in Italian and addressing just the issues, the problems, the questions she had in her mind, just like everybody else in that group received something in their own language, in their own, it was a once in, literally for them, a once in a lifetime 20 minutes with the 16th Karmapa. And in that time, he sat there in Samadhi, and people heard different words, saw different things expressed. One man saw him as Jesus, and so on, so on. This being in the one state, yet manifesting whatever's needed for everybody, is part of our Dharma journey. And I think I mentioned it in the Tonglen teachings last Saturday. About we develop 80 qualities as a bodhisattva, and 2 of them come as a pair. One of them is dharani, the power of mantra, and the other is papa, courage, which is very much to do with through the power, like we do Om Mani Padme Hum. We think of the 6 realms, we think of the details of each realm, the different hells, the different animals, different humans, and then we pray for the future when we're Buddha. All of that means that later on the path, before we're Buddha, just by being inside Om Mani Padme Hum, beings in those realms will experience us, helping them, without our own mind needing to be specifically aware of them. And at Buddhahood, this becomes almost infinite. So it's not really, how can you say, a neat answer to your question. The reason that teachers do put themselves down a lot is because in the teachings about the current age we live in, it says it's a time when charlatans abound, when people are impressed by extraordinary experience. And people will be drawn to those who either how can you say, they give them whiz-bang experiences. When they're in their presence, they get a transformed mind. When they go to a course and they sleep at night time, they get fantastic dreams. Things like this are very easy for a charlatan to manufacture, special experiences. And people are drawn to that, and then people are drawn to teachings they're not ready for. Tummo, the 6 yogas, they really desperately want to work with their chakras, open up their kundalini and all those things, because they are experience hungry. And this is what charlatans thrive on, experience hunger. So it says there is a time, and it's usually in the first 2 of the 10 periods of Shakyamuni Buddha's teaching, when it's appropriate to show miracles and extraordinary abilities or knowledge of past lives or whatever it is. But it says in this 6th age that we're in now, it is better to shut up. And rather than saying, I've got all of these, it's just to communicate on a very human level, to say, no, I'm like you, I'm on the path, I'm further along the path than you, but I'm nothing that special. Don't look at the specialness. Look at what I'm telling you about dealing with anger, about dealing with jealousy, about dealing with pride, because that's what I'm working on, that's what you need to work on. And there you've got a common ground, rather than saying, I'm fantastic, just believe in me. I think that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, thank you. You reminded me that His Holiness twice gave me the experience that he understood my Hebrew. So
yeah,
yes. And then there was another time, I remember, after a teaching of his, we all sat, all the people, 16 of us, and we decided to compare notes so that we don't miss anything. And what happened is that everyone was reading from their notebook almost completely different teaching. So you reminded me.
Yes. It's called in Tibetan, I teach you a Tibetan word, it's called nangwa. Nangwa. Nangwa means the way we each experience reality. For us it's real. Nangwa. Okay, I think that's probably it for today. So thank you all very much. Take good care, have a good week, and see you next week. We already did the dedication, so just wish you all very, very well. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Ken.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Ken. Bye, everyone.
Thank
Thank you, Ken. Bye. Have a good week, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
Ken. Bye.
Bye.